What if I could save you 34% on your real estate investment that turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars more?
Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Kristin Struzyna. This is my husband Hans. We're with the Gunderman Group and Keller Williams Luxury. We're so glad you came back to the channel.
Today we wanted to bring to you this video about 1031 exchange. Kristin and I are not just real estate agents, but real estate planners. As such, it's our goal to help you build wealth through real estate by protecting it, growing it, and transferring it. The 1031 exchange is a fabulous vehicle for people to do just that, and that's why we wanted to make this video in particular. Quick disclaimer though, we're not CPAs, we're not real estate attorneys, and we don't know your specific situation. So before you take any actionable steps, make sure you consult with those folks before you do anything whatsoever. And of course, if you want to have a specific conversation about your real estate values and so forth, our information is down below.
So let's start with what a 1031 exchange is. 1031 exchange refers to Section 1031 of the IRS tax code, and it serves two main purposes. The first is to defer taxable gains on real property that you own. So imagine you purchased a home long ago, it's appreciated significantly over time, and suddenly there's a big gain between where you purchased it at and the current value. So it's to defer the taxes on that increase. The second purpose of it is to encourage real estate investors to reinvest that money into the U.S. real estate market to help stabilize values and increase property values nationwide.
So we're obviously talking to real estate investors, so people who bought residential real estate and moved out of it and put a renter in there, multifamily, shopping malls, all that kind of stuff. This applies to you. Even if you inherited property, this applies to you. This is a strategy you can use. So the very first thing you need to know is, what can you buy with the gain? So if you got that house for $100,000 and now it's worth $1 million, there's a big $900,000 gain. What can you go get with that? Well, the IRS code says you need to go reinvest that into like-kind real estate. And that gets a little confusing for people. Most people assume that if I got a single family house, I have to go buy another single family, or a duplex and a duplex, or a shopping mall and a shopping mall. The good news is it's not that restrictive. Like-kind actually means deeded real estate. Therefore, you can take the proceeds from a single family home and go buy a duplex. You can take the duplex, go buy an apartment building. The apartment building, go buy a shopping mall. You can get mineral rights and land. You can get raw land. Anything that's real property and is deeded qualifies as like-kind.
The only thing that does not qualify under the 1031 is your primary residence. So if you are living in the space, that does not qualify as something that you could use this for.
There are caveats for things like owner-occupied duplexes or ADUs. That's a more advanced tax strategy. We're not going down that road on this video, but we will touch it on later videos. So make sure you like and subscribe so you're not going to miss any of that content that we put out here in the coming weeks.
The next thing to know about the 1031 exchange is that there are specific timelines related to it, and these timelines are really important to keep track of and make sure that you're hitting. Because if you don't hit the timelines, if you go over the deadlines, then you end up not qualifying to use this. So two main timelines that you need to keep in mind. The first is that you've got 45 days from the closing of your one property to identify the property or properties that you're going to purchase afterwards. So that's from the closing date of the one to identify.
And in that 45 days, you have to identify new property, or she said properties. You're allowed to identify up to 200% of the value of what property you sold on this list of new properties. So for example, you sell a property for round figures at $1 million, let's say that's the value. You can then go identify up to $2 million of real estate as a potential replacement, but you only have to close on $1 million or more of it, and we'll get to that in a second.
And this could be multiple properties, so this doesn't have to just be one single property. You could sell your property for $1 million, and since you've got the 200%, you could then go purchase 4 properties at $500,000 each, because that adds up to $2 million. So there's a lot of flexibility within this. The second timeline that you've got to be really aware of in doing a 1031 exchange is that you've got 180 days to close on the property or properties that you're purchasing from the date of the closing of your relinquished property. The thing to note about this is that these two timelines, the 45 days to identify and the 180 days to close, run in conjunction with each other. So it's not 180 days from the date you identify, it's 180 days from the closing of the relinquished property.
And because this is an IRS tax rule, they have no leniency, so do not miss those dates. And then the next obvious question is, how would they know, right? Well, you actually have to use an impartial third party, much like an escrow officer, but it's someone who's called a Qualified Intermediary, or QI. Almost every big bank and title and escrow office will have a Qualified Intermediary division whose responsibility is as follows. Number one, they're responsible to hold all the money. They are people who take the funds so that they don't go into your account personally, but they go hold them in a separate account and make sure that that money gets totally reinvested. Secondly, they do all of your documentation around your 200% rule, around your closing date, around your 45 and 180 day time window, and prepare all the IRS documents appropriately. And then third, they facilitate the moving of the money from your closing escrow over to your new property's escrow, and everything sort of in between logistically. Now, one really important thing to note is qualified intermediaries are not regulated or licensed. Really odd, I know, but it's a fact. So you really need to do your diligence on those people and those institutions. How are they specifically protecting your money? What insurances do they have that it's insured properly and you're not going to lose your principal? All of that kind of diligence is quite important.
So there's a couple of really important rules that you need to know with doing a 1031 exchange. The first is that the property that you are acquiring, or properties that you're acquiring, need to be of equal or greater value to the relinquished property. If it's not of equal or greater value, let's say you're selling the one for $1 million and you're purchasing at $900,000, then there's that gap there. And that gap is called a boot. And what happens with a boot is that you then are taxed on that boot. So make sure that in you're doing this, that you're going for properties that are of equal or greater value.
The second one is if you have any debt. Let's say you had a mortgage on that $1 million property of $300,000. and you go to buy a new property, you have to replace the debt. Now, this rule is written in somewhat of an interesting way, and most people don't know this, but if you do replace the debt, but you don't want to get a new loan because you don't qualify or you don't want the FICO score hit or any of that kind of stuff, you can actually bring in new cash. You have to replace it with something, meaning new debt or new cash. Now, talk to your QI, talk to your title and escrow officers and your CPAs before you go and do this, but just know that that is an option.
Okay, and the third rule is that you've got to put all of the proceeds from the relinquished property into the new property if you want to take advantage of this tax deferment. So you can't take part of it out, not pay taxes on that, and then put the rest of it towards the new property. If you take some of it out, you would then be taxed on that amount that you took out.
And that part is, again, called a boot. So anytime you hear about a boot in a 1031 exchange, it generally means a taxable event, and it's some amount of money that the IRS is going to go after.
So we hope you got some value out of that. 1031 exchanges are such a fabulous way to build your wealth generationally and take advantage of this. As always, thank you so much for being here. And if you're interested in doing a 1031 exchange, feel free to get in touch with us below. But as always, consult your CPA, consult your tax attorney so that you make sure you're getting the best advice. We'll see you on the next one.